This is a show for grown-ups.
And they say bad words.
And they say bad words.
Say final warning.
Final warning.
Hello and welcome to the Pot of Blunders. I'm here with my co-host Richard Sullivan.
Good morning.
Shut up, Richard. God. And another host and their co-host. Go introduce yourselves. Go, Dennis. Go.
Yeah, I'm Dennis Veray. I GM and edit for Control Group.
Hey, I'm Marcus Trox. I also work on Control Group and I make games on Itch.io and write scripts.
I didn't know the script thing. Okay, we're going to get to that. First and foremost, tell me about the podcast.
Yeah, so Control Group is a small play. So as opposed to actual plays, we like to condense games down to little bite-sized bits. TTRPG testing podcast. So we like to find systems that people don't have a lot of experience with or do as veterans in the community, and just highlight them in specific ways, telling different stories with our different voices. We have a huge cast of testers that come on and test games with us. So we just like showing off from specifically our mission statement is to show off voices that aren't typically heard around the table.
So how long has your show been going on?
We're about to hit our 1-year anniversary. So I'm sure by the time this episode hits off, we just turned 1 year old, baby.
Yes, we're so close.
Happy birthday, soon to be, or by the time this airs, yeah, probably belated. That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
So where did the idea for your podcast come from?
Okay, so I was leaving. We met in Arizona. So we're from Arizona and we met in college up north. And I remember the day that I was driving home to start to continue this big plan where, you know, we're moving to Chicago and all this stuff. And I called up Dennis on a whim and I was like, oh my gosh, Dennis, this is what we have to do. Everyone's doing 5e podcasts. We have to do a D&D podcast, but not 5e. As long as it's not, then it'll be a success because no one does that. They all do 5e. And he was like, yeah, that's a great idea. We didn't do anything for a while. I didn't initiate anything at all. And then one day we were just walking around Chicago and then shooting ideas for what it could be named and, you know, what ideas we could do. And then Dennis really initiated it saying, we're going to start with Monster of the Week. And I have an idea for a campaign. And we just started there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a big thing. Tome of Mysteries had just come out. That's how long ago the idea had started from. So I was like, oh, we can show off Tome of Mysteries at least to people and show this fun little expansion to Monster of the Week. So we went with the idea I had for a campaign and we've been rolling ever since.
That's great. And it's not just you, the both of you for your podcast. You have a series of, I don't want to say guests, but longtime people, right?
Yeah, I've been actually struggling on what to call everyone because we had after our first couple months, we had a bunch of guest testers come on, but now they're on kind of our regular cast and crew. And we have like 22 people all together that we cycle through to test the systems. And it's just a good way to like get different variety. Like I said, on Twitter, I think a little bit earlier than this episode, but like if you don't like a certain way I DM, other people DM the games. Like if you don't like a specific person's voice, like go listen to another episode. We have like fun people.
We started with the two of us and then my roommate Nick and then another of our friends, Hadley. We all met in college and Hadley was for sure a novice. And then Dennis and I had done a lot of games. So it was, and then Nick was in between. So it was cool because we had kind of players on all ends of the spectrum. And we got to play with, were we going to do more dramatic things or were we going to do more comedic things? Were we going to have romance? And I think these are questions that every group asks. And it was cool to try out different stuff. It was so fun.
So how do you choose what games you play?
We truly, it's just whatever piques our interest and whatever is suggested to us. So like now that we've grown with a little bit more of a Twitter following, we get emails of people like every day send us a system that like, hey, I'm testing out the system in Indie Dev, which is exactly what I wanted for
Yes.
So it's just like really awesome that like a bunch of people are sending us games now. But in the beginning, it was truly whatever I had an idea for at the time. If a specific story I wanted to tell, I would look around for systems that could fit that story, basically. So we started off with Monster of the Week, Tome of Mysteries, like we said, and then, the world changed, so we couldn't meet in person anymore. And we went online, and then Marcus was the first one that helped us back into online play because we weren't sure how long everything was going to last. And he's like, hey, I found Pasión de las Pasiones. Let's play that. And like, we originally weren't even going to record that for the podcast. But I was like, no, this is exactly what we need. Like, this is the next system for us to test.
So you do run shorter campaigns and one shots. Has there been any temptation to really just dig in and do like a supplementary long campaign?
By the time this comes out, we do come back to ideas. I think by the time this episode comes out, it'll be revealed that we go back to our very first storyline. It came from Like Mary that was on Monster of the Week, except this time we switched it over to testing Monster Hearts too. So we've switched the game system over as well, but we're continuing that idea, that larger idea of the story. And that's an idea we've kicked around of like, oh, we really enjoyed this. Like, we need to get back to these characters somehow. So we've like found this balance, whereas like, if we can find a new system to test it with, like, of course, we'll go back to that story.
I think for me, I'm really fickle. I love to change our mentality. I love to change what story we're trying to tell a lot. So every time that we swap to a new system, it works perfectly for me. But we definitely do change our minds. It's like, okay, this has been so fun, and I want this to keep going. Like, honestly, it's my dream that we'll go back to Game of Thrones soon, but I don't know. So we'll see.
It'll take some time. I need a really good war system for it. But yeah.
Need a palate cleanser, couple different systems.
Exactly. To get it out of there. Exactly. And we do fudge it a little bit. Like, we started with this fine little pattern where like, okay, 8 episodes is all we get. Now we're up to 10 episodes. So it's just eventually until we're like, all right, 12 episodes now. All right, 20 is fine for a mini session,
It's only going to be a year and a half. No worries. It'll be in and out.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're part of a network now.
Yes, we are. We are part of the Be Gay Roll Dice Network.
That's awesome.
It kind of comes back to us saying we want to bridge in voices that aren't really heard at the table. So just being, personally myself, being a Black man running this podcast, and then also being a queer Black person that runs this podcast. There's a lot of the same faces in a lot of the popular podcasts out there, and that's perfectly fine. But you need that diversity for really fun stories to be told. So
what does it mean to be part of a network? Like, what does it entail? Is there like a jump in, jump out kind of thing? Like,
yeah, I've been pretty in it for the long haul. There's a nice big community Discord or a bunch of channels where fans, even if you check out our podcast and you're like, oh, I kind of want to talk directly to the people in Control Group, you can head on to the Be Gay Roll Dice Discord, hop into our little channel that's made for us and for our fans to pop in. And they do every so often be like, hey, I just listened to the last episode. Like, what are you doing with this? Like, what's going to happen next? Like, you can't just kill Nate like that. But yeah, and we work with each other in various ways, just crossover episodes. We promote the other podcasts on the network as much as possible. So we have an ad rota that goes around where we have our own Control Group ad that everyone will put before their episode or in their mid-roll. So it's just a good way to, like I said, get more voices out. So if you're a big fan of some other little queer podcast, like, you can hear a voice from another little queer podcast and you're like, oh, I really enjoy that idea. I'll check them out. And it's just about spreading the word and trying to lift each other up.
So you're both very much involved in like PBTA games, both in terms of running them and designing them, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know between the two of you, Marcus is the more prolific designer, but you've both definitely dabbled and created full of games. Tell me why PBTA?
Oh, that's a good question. We have honestly, every day there's a new message from one of us to the other that's like, why isn't there a system for blank? And then we're like, okay, I guess we'll look around, we'll see on the internet if there is one. And then ultimately half the time it's like, okay, these ones are pretty good, but we really want one that's player facing and one that is story focused. And like, it always brings us back to Powered by the Apocalypse. And it's so focused too. It's so focused on, like, every single time I'm like, okay, cool, this one I'm gonna do with 4 stats instead of 5. I still always end up with 5, but it's still streamlined, and it's like, instead of having us try and cover every possible scenario so that the GM knows, okay, cool, if I get into this scenario, I can use the book here to tell what kind of numbers I need for that. Instead of that, what we do is we have all the examples of what players need to be thinking about, basically, right? So if they know, here's all the things that you for sure can do, but you can also kind of do everything else. They can focus on those if they want to and know, okay, this game is going to be less focused on combat. This game is going to be more romantic, or this game is going to be more about mystery solving, right? And I love that so much, that it's more about like, I want to try and make this story happen than I want to try and do this action right now. Let's roll and see if I can do it, you know?
And I think, yeah, jumping off of that, I think it comes to our general sort of being, as most of the original testers and everyone in the podcast at large and the larger testing family came out of the same theater department. So we're storytellers by heart. And I think when it comes to systems, it's fine to love the number crunch, love the click clacks. But I find in certain systems, when you get to rolling the dice, that's when the motion stops of everything. That's when the story starts falling apart. And then it's up to the DM or GM to kind of bridge those gaps in whatever ways they can. And they'll do it effortlessly. But I really love a system where rolling is often like a necessity. Like I personally can't tell you can't do that anymore. It's up to you to see if fate will let you have this moment. Because there's so many, I think there's maybe even full episodes of the podcast where we don't even we just role play the entire time. And that's something that PBTA games really allow for, is just like, I know what my character is. I know like they're not their stereotype, but they're just kind of tropes. And I know how to play with those.
Yeah.
I'll play with those to the utmost of my ability. And if I just want to focus on role playing with another character, I absolutely can for the longest time without being like, oh, make an insight check to see if they're lying. It's just like, you get social cues, you know if they're lying or not. And
I mean, PBTA games, they're so wide branching and how many different options do you have? I think you made the perfect choice for a narrative-based podcast to have narrative-based games, because like you said, if you do the crazy crunchy stuff, it's like audio poison. You can't listen to that too often.
Exactly. It's just, and thinking about it, since we're a shorter podcast as well, just like we only have 8 to 10 hours to tell a story. So like if most of the episode is like, all right, I rolled a 4 plus 2. All right, I have advantage. Let me roll again. That just like eats up the time we have to present the story and the system to people.
And probably kills your editors just who have to edit all the numbers out.
Yeah, it sucks.
I'm sure Richard's sitting there getting like PTSD from.
Yep, from the first 3 episodes, because I always try to cut it where we crunch the numbers, but if we can cut it in a way where the audience doesn't have to know how the sausage is made.
Yep, exactly.
You know?
Yes.
We had one game where we were in a combat for like, I felt like an hour and a half, a single D&D 5e combat. I'm like, no one's listening to any of this.
Yeah, that's often how I feel about.
Don't go looking for it. You won't find it now.
No, it was up and it's gone. Dennis, what's a shonen?
A shonen is a young warrior.
All right.
Hey, what's a transition?
I've never seen one in my life. I wouldn't know.
That's pretty good.
So shonen is like the genre, right? So I thought it was like, this is your guys' last action story you will ever need for your life.
It like literally translates into young man, young actionful man. So like, yeah.
The reason I asked this, of course, is because you have a game about this.
Yes.
Tell me about it, please.
Yeah, of course. So like the first real system that I had a hack at and wanted to put under the label of the entire podcast out of Control Group Labs, which is what I've deigned our little creationary suite of the podcast, is The Last Shonen, which is a play on The Last Action Hero. But it's a system, it's a PBTA hack system, focuses on creating anime. So much like we've been talking about, a lot of the systems out there that you to create anime type campaigns have a lot of crunch behind them.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I want to strip that all away. I want to take my knowledge of what I know of anime, and very specifically the shonen genre, which is that action heavy, your Dragon Ball Z, your Young Hero, your My Hero Academia kind of stories, and find a way to boil that down and distill it into a wonderful system. And The Last Shonen, the beta is what exists of it right now. I still haven't finished it. It's close though; it's so close. But the beta of it is what exists and what you're looking at.
So I interviewed someone named Mother Multiverse, and they were working on it was an isekai game, and I had the same thing. I'm like, I thought I was a fan of anime. I don't know any of these words.
Yeah, as you like really deep delve, you realize that just saying I love anime is like a huge thing, because like, do you love romance anime or shoujo anime? Do you like isekai anime, or like a normal dude falling into a mystical land, or shonen, which is your basic action, what you think about when you think of anime?
I'm learning so much. I have my notebook right here. I'm just
In fact, when it came to this system, Marcus had also made an anime system that was more slice of life, which is another type of, basic anime genre. So we had to decide when it came to the storytelling, like which system we were going to use for the podcast itself.
I think it came from our discussions of where would the archetypes come from, and of course, and then Dennis chooses the character types in an action story, and I don't even know why I chose this. I chose like, you choose what school club they're in. So if you're in like the occult club, or if you're into like baseball, or if they're like a teen idol or something, my classes are based on that. But we definitely I mean, honestly, you could make infinite systems out of it. I mean, there's so much stories you could tell.
So Marcus, you're also a big game designer. What is your favorite game that you've made so far?
Oh,
pick your favorite baby that you've made.
Okay. I was just thinking about this. This is the game that I think got the least actual appreciation from my point of view when I released it. But I had this game called Power Couple that uses tarot cards instead of dice rolls. And at first I was like, is that appropriate? I don't know if some people would view them as more important to them. I mean, and then I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And then I'll put on the first page. If this doesn't feel an appropriate use for you, then that's fine. If that's what you choose, that's perfectly okay. But it's about, you are basically like Goku and Vegeta, but you're married. And you are the two most powerful people in the world, and it's your duty to protect the Earth. So every tarot card that you draw is some other kind of alien entity or event that's happening that basically crash lands on Earth, and you have to protect the world from it. So
very cool. Is it using the both major and minor arcana, or just?
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot of options and stuff to get through. So does each card represent a separate entity, or is it just like a randomization engine for different things that happen?
So the major arcana it'll give like a broad sort of symbolic idea of what this story is going to be about, of like the magician arrives. So this is the protector of Mars. So they're very similar to you, but they protect another planet nearby. So they come and give you a mission where you have to work with them. So now use your roles if you need to find out how this story plays out. And then you use the minor arcana to make those dice rolls, right? So the higher the number is that you would get would be more successful you are.
So what do you find more satisfying? Do you find it more satisfying to create these games or to play them?
That's a good question. I think I definitely have always felt like I was a writer, and I've always written, all kinds of scripts and everything. And all my friends, we all trade scripts all the time. But eventually I was like, when I learned about itch, and when I learned about this RPG community and everything, I was like, maybe that would fit better, because I love creating these worlds and I love thinking in the macrocosm perspective. But then getting into the minutia of it, it's like, sometimes it feels like I'm wasting my time. And I love just grabbing all the pieces, giving this toy box kind of, and the sandbox to people and seeing what they do with it. I think is so fascinating. So I love making games and just building this whole toolbox and just letting it loose into the world, I guess. So
it's like a fun sociology experiment almost, to see like,
exactly.
Okay, here are the toys, let's sit back and watch. How about you, Dennis? What do you think? Playing, reviewing, making, what's best for you?
I think, it's the other way for me. I really love creating systems. I really do enjoy it. It's just like Marcus was saying, when it gets down to the micro, when I'm writing rules for everything, when I'm editing the copy for the system itself. And I'm like, why the fuck am I formatting? Like, no one's gonna look at this PDF. Why am I? That's the reason. Like, I have like 5 games that are unfinished that are ready to go under our Control Group Labs moniker. They're like so close to done. I wish people could just pay on itch and then call me and I'll just orally tell you all the rules. That would be my dream if that could happen. But no, I that's why I prefer, playing in the micro, playing within the bounds that people like Marcus throw out and finding what stories I can create for that. I love thinking of stories for the podcast. It's one of my favorite things to do. But I also love reviewing systems. I think it's good. The biggest thing is about showing people different systems. And one of the things that kept me going in the very beginning was getting text from people to be like, hey, I've never heard of this system before. Like, I'm using it with my friends, or we've never used this. One of the best texts I ever gotten was, hey, I've never heard about this system before. I'm using it in my therapy sessions with the kids I work with. And I'm like, God, I'm so glad I could give that to you. Like, that makes everything worth it.
I know, Marcus, I know you've been part of game jams in the past, or at least one that I know of. What's your experience with a game jam?
Oh, so cool. I think everyone on itch uses that to get some inspiration, right? So if you're like, oh, I really want to keep writing and keep making stuff, but I have no idea what it's going to be. You just scroll through the jam page and see, basically, if you look through 20 of them, you're going to see maybe a couple where you're like, ooh, I wonder what I would do with that. So then what you'll probably do at that point is decide, why don't I make something that can be put into both jams? And then I can have more eyes on this thing once I release it. So I can put it into multiple jams because it follows all the criteria. So, but they're so cool, so supportive too. I was in this bundle for a trans charity, and it was it was incredible. And we were shocked by how many people donated too. We put all our games in there just without gaining any kind of profit from it or anything, and it was just everyone who bought the bundle would be able to donate to the charity, and it was incredible. There was
really
even
cool.
actually, it was Dicebreaker did an article on it as well, and I was shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, I was in this bundle that's being advertised right now on the news outlets. It was incredible. It's really fun.
That's great. The few other creators I've talked to that have done game jams have talked about like almost needing that constraint because of the fear of the blank page. Like, I have no idea what I want to do. But if you say, here's a box you have to play in, then now I have all these ideas that I can run with. So what's next for the podcast?
By the time this episode is even coming out, we've been doing a 1K giveaway because we hit 1K Twitter followers.
Congrats.
So thank you so much. If you follow us, you like the tweet, we've got little custom Control Group dice that we've been handing out. If you get us on Patreon, I'm giving away D6 spinning rings. Across the room, or I'd show you, but it's a ring that has a D6 on it. It's awesome. And then you also get an episode on our Patreon called The Experience, where I personally take you through an episode of Control Group just by yourself. And if you know, you know. It's a fun little thing like that. But yeah, and like I mentioned before, we're recording a lot of tests right now. We really reopened everything back up. So a lot of one-shots of all the systems we've been getting from people, all the games we've been wanting to try. Even actually, I think one of the first episodes we recorded in this block of like fun little one-shots was actually a recommendation from you guys.
Oh, what was it?
I was checking out we tested out, you're in quarantine with Adam Driver and he wants you to read a script.
Yes. Fantastic
so
choice.
We tested out games like that. Yeah, exactly. At work, I saw your tweet about it. I looked at it and I immediately sent it into the chat and I was like, hey, we're playing this tonight. You can play with me.
That's excellent.
So yeah, games like that. Like I said, we're returning back to our Lake Mary mythos from our very first Monster of the Week session. So Return to Lake Mary should be out by the time this episode is out. And other systems we're testing from other creators. Game Nomicon sent us the test for Warmer in the Winter, which is a PBTA about making your own Hallmark Christmas movie. So we've been playing and we're recording through that. And all
that one is so good.
Amazing.
For Warmer in the Winter, is that one that's extremely close to Monster Hearts in terms of like the strings between characters, isn't? I know it wasn't the alpha anyway. I haven't read.
Yeah, so in the alpha at least, yeah, they still have the strings, so the things that connect players. As a thing that always comes up during various games we play, because we played a world of Ice and Fire, which is the Game of Thrones system, and those also had strings. And it's a thing that always comes up, and every time everyone always asks, like, what the fuck is a string? How do we make this?
We're slowly learning every single time. We're trying to get it.
We're like on our fourth system now with strings, and every episode 0, someone's like, all right, so explain strings to me again.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to get over conditions. Conditions will always be a question on the podcast.
And that's the most intuitive thing. It's like you can spend a string, but if you pull the string, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Exactly.
I always have them on my character sheet in the episode, and I'm like, okay, how can you use this? How do you use this again at all? Okay, try and use one this episode. You have tons of strings. You never use them. I never do.
I want to trade in 3 strings for a knot. Is that a thing I can do? No, you're making me do something. Is there anything that we haven't asked you yet that you just have a dying need to talk about before we let you go for the night?
I think we just want to go bigger. I think we want to keep going bigger. We want to release more stuff. We want to release games that we worked on together, and we want to include more people. And we love hearing from people who enjoyed our episodes or have stuff we want to try out. And we're always looking for more genres that we haven't even tapped into too. Because we've done sci-fi, we've done fantasy, we've done noir, we've done all kinds of stuff, anime, but we're trying to do more every single time. And if we really feel like, okay, we've done every type of game we can, then I'll be surprised. But we're just going to keep going. And because now each of us are always working on like 2 or 3 games a week. We used to do 1 every 2 weeks, and we're trying to go faster and faster. So this is awesome.
Yeah, I saw you had a couple times where you were releasing 2 episodes on the same day for weeks at a time.
Yeah, that was at the very tip of the pandemic. Is I had a lot of free time on my hands, so we released our Lasers and Feelings mini campaign along with our Game of Thrones mini campaign. So that was 2 episodes every week, and I was flying through those.
Yeah,
I could not imagine releasing 2 mini campaigns at the same time right now.
I was like, how the hell do they manage that? Are they gods? And yes, after meeting you both, yes, I can say that you are both gods. So congratulations.
Thank you. I get that a lot.
Yeah, and it's just, it's getting bigger, getting better. I'm going to throw out stuff that I want your listeners to listen to hold me culpable for systems, actually. So I'm working on a magical Western system. So Old West plus dark magic. You can see that eventually. Tweet at us and it'll make me work on it. I've also been working on just a bunch of 1-page systems, kind of as goofs. So I have one called What Are We, Some Kind of Suicide Squad, where you get to make your own Suicide Squad, much like the DC IP. And it's just a large table where you get to draw your shitty supervillain power. And the whole concept of the game is you trying to go out in the most amazing way, because you're not going to make it. You already know Boone, Harley Quinn, and Croc are on the team, so there's no way you're going to survive until the end. So it's about dying the flashiest.
Pokemon and Power Rangers. Those are games we are always talking about, but never actually get done. So if you ever tweet that to Dennis, we will get on it. Either of those, because we'll be too excited to stop. So.
That's been my holy grail for the entire time I've been playing role-playing games, is a functioning Pokemon role-playing game. That's not just a billion numbers in the tables.
So many every time. We've been searching. I send one to Marcus every day. Like, do we want this much crunch on the podcast? I can't. This is so much math, but we
times
could
1,000 for each Pokemon.
Yeah.
So the only one I've ever found that came close was a solo game called Like No One Ever Was.
Ooh.
So you have your little creature that you take along with you. You go different places, and your bond, like you can spend and risk doing different activities, and then you get to go to the Elite Four and take on those guys. That came the closest, but it's a solo game, so it's a really tough sell for an audio platform.
Yeah.
There you go. There's one for free
at the time. Yeah.
Thank you both so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate
Thank you for having us.
No, it's my pleasure. Anytime you want to come back, next time you have a new game coming out, or just want to come back and chat, I'd love to have you back on.
Thanks for asking us questions. We love talking. So
I
guess we started a podcast.
We made a podcast.
Yeah.
Hey folks, it's Nate. I want to thank Dennis and Mark again for being awesome guests and being awesome game creators and making an even better podcast than ours. I didn't think it was possible, and then I listened to their shit. And now our shit seems extremely good still, but just not quite as good. Like A+ versus A++, you know? Like, we're awesome, but man, now we have something to aspire to. That's enough humility for one night. Please go check out the show notes for links to their amazing podcast, their awesome games. I mean, they're just doing so many things right now. The last episode I heard of theirs was a wrestling one, and it was the best. It's so good. Treat yourself. After you're done with us, go listen to all their stuff, their back catalog if you haven't already. You're not going to have a bad time, I promise. If you want to support our show, please head over to patreon.com/potofblunders. There you can join for $1, $5, or $10 a month, get over 10 hours of bonus content, a free game. Well, not free, you paid for it. And just help us keep the lights on. Help us keep this thing going. Help me get a new microphone, hopefully, because this thing is falling apart. You can tell by the sound of my voice. I also want to offer something new. If you go on iTunes and you leave a 5-star review for us and a comment, email me at potofblunders@gmail.com, and I will read your stuff out loud on air. Even if it's an ad for your own show or your own product, go ahead and leave us a review. I'll read it, unless it's really fucked up and weird, like a plea to your old high school girlfriend to come back to you. Just get over it, man. She doesn't want you anymore. Take the hint. It's been 15 years. It's getting weird. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. A special thanks to our patrons for helping us out. And for the Pot of Blunders, I've been Nate Magnuski, and as always, may all your D's be 12s.
Thank you.